Good afternoon, Christoph.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Very good. Today, very interesting, there is a word in Chinese social media, extremely interesting, called 内转, which is involution. I send you a video clip about. Have you thought about this?
Yeah, I've looked at a couple of examples of Nejuan.
Yeah.
If I understand this correctly, there is actually a pretty precise description of what this is about, which suggests some, how we can deal with it.
Yeah.
But I would need to draw a little picture in order to, show you, what is
perfect.
really behind this. But I can show you a concept of what might be behind this.
A graphic illustration.
A graphic illustration.
Will be almost very welcome.
Okay,
Please.
So let's try this, and then you tell me whether this actually captures the essence of Nejuan.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we have two people in the cinema. Okay, and so I have, and they do something. So here is the person one benefit, and here is the person two benefit. Okay, if person one gets up or sits, right, and if person two gets up or sits, right?
Oh, this is the you watch the famous soap opera at the moment called The Little Dilemma. There is a clip about, if in the cinema, right? The story, if in the cinema, the first row stand up.
That's right. That is one of the examples of Nejuan that I have seen, right?
Yeah.
But it's also,
So the idea is
it is an analysis of that.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Please.
So we are both in the cinema, right? And if we both sit, then you get a benefit of 100, satisfaction points, and I get a benefit of 100 satisfaction points, and we're both happy, and we're seeing the show, right? Now, if we both get up, right, we can still see both the show, but, it's uncomfortable because we both are now all of a sudden standing. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we only get 50 satisfaction points of benefit, right? Now, the problem, why this is a little dilemma, and that's precisely right, it's a dilemma, is what if person one keeps sitting, but person two all of a sudden gets up, right? Then person two gets to see the show, plus, I am bigger than you and I see more than you, plus a little bit of a hee satisfaction.
Yes.
And person one gets nothing because they're just sitting there stupidly and they don't see anything.
Yeah.
And if we do it the other round, person one gets up, then person one gets to 200, and person two who keeps sitting gets nothing. Right? Now, the problem arises because, so this is a game. So there is something in mathematics which is called game theory, right? And this is a game where our outcome depends on both of our behavior. It's an interaction, right? Where this is, of course, what we expect to be doing.
But it's the most unstable, right?
But it's unstable because if we are here, then if I'm person one, hey, I have an incentive to change because I would be better off at your cost. And in the same way, if we're here, you have an incentive to change and you get up and then you get a bigger benefit. And so in the end, this is the only stable situation in this, in this case, where we're both standing up. And we both don't see better than here, and we're both worse off, but that's the only stable situation where nobody has an incentive to do something else in order to get a leg up over the others, right? And that is precisely what this example, of the cinema describes. But this also applies for the situation with the boss, right? Where this is, I go home at 6 o'clock, this is, I stay later, right? And here also go home, stay later. Right? And we would all like to go home at 6 o'clock, right? But because if I'm the one who stays later than you, just by 1 minute, I get a leg up over you. And in the end, we are all staying until midnight, and we all hate it, and we're all worse off, and nobody gets the benefit. We're just all worse off. So you see how this is a very typical situation. So this is not rare. This is actually quite typical in social interactions. So that is what I understood
I think you're
Nejuan
right.
to be.
Right.
So Am I understanding this correctly? Does that correspond to your understanding of the concept?
Well, this is a internet buzzing words, right?
Yeah.
It's a symmetric change in the meaning of the original words.
That's right. I understand originally Neijuan means that an artistic concept has settled into something that is unmovable, right? And
it's into a manner.
Yeah.
So it's like a gossip building.
Yeah.
It's set into a manner, but it doesn't. It reached a final point. It's stabilized, and it's the frustration of how it could transform. It doesn't. It's just internally getting more complicated and complex.
Yeah, and we are competing against each other without a real cause.
Yeah.
That's what the element, the essence here is, that in that situation we compete against each other without a real cause.
You see, this is very interesting because this is what people now use Neijuan for.
Yeah.
It is actually, at the benefit of your illustrating it, actually reminds me it's actually prisoner theory, which is the part of the game theory.
That's right. This situation in game theory is called prisoner's dilemma. And I don't want now to spend time explaining why it's called prisoner's dilemma. Yeah. There is a history to this. Yeah. But this is a very well-known situation in economics where people are pitted against each other without really a benefit, right? They're treading water and they're competing, and in the end everybody is worse off.
But now the Chinese use the words Chinese Neijuan. In English, they use the words involution.
Involution, yes.
The thing really frustrates me because I don't think there is a word. The English involution doesn't really mean the thing they're talking about, right?
I don't know what the English word involution means.
So you don't even know the words of the English words involution means. I then checked. There's a lot of religious talk about involution. It's about the gods embedded its own spirit into the universe and its creation.
Okay.
And involution also means they use the words often to contrast with evolution.
Okay.
Even the theory of social evolution has been criticized by the words involution because people say the social evolution is comparing human to animals.
Yeah, okay. Now, look, language develops as language develops.
Exactly.
Right? And so, if young people today who are conversing on the internet want to call this involution, they can call it involution. They can call it whatever they like. Now, I think, however, it is useful to connect this word involution to something where the structure and the reasons for and what the results are, that is known from science, that's actually useful, right? Okay. So, so to give you one more facet of this, there was an economist, Robert Frank, who in the 1980s connected this to emotions. And he said, sometimes the fact that we are competing to each other without a benefit is actually emotional. For example, in the workplace, this could be, we are doing a normal, safe job, but I can outdo you by doing something daring and dangerous. Right. Well, it's dangerous, but, I get so much kudos from it that, I feel I get a benefit. But then I have the incentive, I can do the same thing. And in the end, we end up in a workplace where we are all taking risks. We're doing things which are dangerous. All of a sudden, we live in a dangerous workplace without any benefit because we are both again at the same place. And we have turned something that was safe into something that is unsafe. All for emotional reasons of trying to outdo each other. Social competition. So sometimes this is not even for a real benefit. For example, how much do I see in the cinema? This is for an imaginary benefit which makes me feel better at your cost.
But this is a phenomenon which I think is bound to happen. It is not new, right?
Oh, it's not new. People have done this since the dawn of times. This is part of human psychology, which is why this has been picked up by science as, with a formal description as this is quite typical human behavior in groups. This is the human as a social animal with certain biases.
So let's step back a little bit.
Yeah. From
understanding the internet buzzing words of Neijuan, which is their core involution, to a wider phenomenon. it is what you actually talk about, Frank's, quest on this emotional side of it. Often we try to compare us or success with other people.
That's right.
But it doesn't really, I think this is I would say, the kind of delusion people makes. By comparing yourself with the others, it helps you to improve or to achieve what they achieve.
People do this. Social comparison is very, very important in human life. Actually, happiness researchers have shown that happiness only goes up with material wealth to a certain degree. Roughly up to $10,000, $12,000 of annual GDP per head, right? Because if you're poor, then that, having more allows you, to have a refrigerator, a television, makes you happier. But beyond about $12,000 of income per head, more wealth doesn't make you happy. Happiness then is driven by social comparison. Social comparison is fundamentally important in human life.
The distribution of...
It's the distribution of, the benefits in a hunter and gatherer group. And therefore, social comparison, always keeping track of where am I, and my children versus the people around us, is deeply ingrained in us. That's why we watch movie stars on television, because they look like they're in the family, because we can see them. This social comparison is part of human psychology. So we do this comparing us to others all the time, right? And it takes, but we only do it in the local group, among the people who we can see, right? You don't compare yourself to Elon Musk, because you know his name, but he is very, very far away, right? So that he is richer than you are, doesn't concern you too much. But if your buddy who lives next door has more than you have, that concerns you,
That's right.
A great deal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's our psychology, and that has advantages, right? Because local connections are not tangent free, but they also give the benefit of guanxi and relationships, right? But the other side of that is causes, prisoner's dilemma is social interaction, social competition. It's part of human psychology. We all do it. You can see this in all cultures. This is not unique to the Chinese culture. All other cultures do this too.
I'm totally aware of this. I mean, so even for the for the industry, right? You have now a set of rules you need to obey.
Yeah.
You can make certain innovation in certain areas to differentiate yourself. But to find a differentiation, I would say it's hard. Plus, it's also risky.
Yeah.
When you try to create a new words or a new concept of a design, or even a new way of doing the old thing to achieve old results, it's hard to persuade people to do it.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason of they call 内卷, involution, is created by the environment. So the macro environment. China has grown so fast.
Yeah.
So the economic growth and the social growth has not paired each other. It happens everywhere. That's why I think inequality happens. The excess of opportunity happens. Right?
Well,
China probably is in a more extreme situation.
Well, in China, wealth has, for many people, for half of the population, the people who live closer to the coast,
very good you mentioned
a lot in the
Very
last
good.
generation.
Yeah.
And so one could expect, hey, if you have all become so much richer, you should all be relaxed. And the problem is,
it's not
that's not how human psychology works. Because when I get wealthier, I don't compare myself to what I had 10 years ago. I compare myself, has my neighbor become even more wealthier than I have? And that's what then people are concerned about.
You rightly point out the Chinese overall life standards and the quality has increased
A lot.
dramatically.
Yes.
But people are still not happy some area. So if you quote, there is a very famous Chinese philosopher, which I embarrassingly forgot the name, but it says the problem is never about poverty. The problem is about evenly distribute, right? But we know evenly distribution is not going to work either. Because if once everything is said we're going to be equally distributed, why would you want to work? So the interesting thing, right?
Yeah.
Evolution stop you to work because, hey, there is so little we can do to improve the status. Let's just not do anything. It will happen that way.
Well, human psychology says we still work in order to get a leg up over the other person, even though that leg up may be imaginary.
Exactly.
Right? And so sometimes we work ourselves to death for no
But
apparent
that
benefit.
effort
And the
is not
question is,
breakthrough, right?
why? And the answer is be emotionally, right? And so if you want to avoid this, right, there is one Buddhist answer, which is it's all a mirage, and we distance ourselves from it and we do not compete with other people. So actually Buddhism has an answer to this, right? But there's also another answer, right, which is norms of good behavior. So, for example, if you go back to the first example that we started with,
it sounds like Immanuel Kant now.
Well, I think good manners have been unfairly, dismissed and disparaged.
I agree.
Especially in the West, in the baby boomer generation, which is my generation. I remember when I was a teenager when we said, "Oh, people who are putting heavy emphasis on good manners are just old fart." In German we could call them Spießer, which means small-minded, bourgeois, half-fascist, narrow-minded people, right? And so you should live out your life and be free. And good manners was dismissed. Well, good manners can help you to overcome this by saying, well, you simply don't get up. It's not good manners to do something at the cost of others in a social situation. There's something to be said about good manners. Good manners means I internalize that I need to take into account how I affect you with my actions. Totally. That's what good manners are. So cultural education, good manners is not the whole answer, of course, but part of an answer. Learn how to take consideration of other people. Exactly. How to respect other people. There is something to be said for this. The other answer, of course, is if you do this with people with whom you interact all the time. If we're friends and I see you again tomorrow, if I today get up in the cinema and block your view, then you will give me a telling off tomorrow, right? So relationships, repeated interaction. This happens worse with strangers than, with people who you know. So there is a number of things that you can do in order to avoid Nejuan, that are actually not that hard and they don't require us all to be ethical heroes. This can be done by normal people like you and me.
You mentioned about the good manner, which is the good manner of respecting each other, good communication. Through the last 20 years of growth, I certainly felt the Chinese family concept has broken down a bit. Mm-hmm. Seriously, when I was young, the New Year in the city would have all your relatives come around the table, 20, 30 of them. A moment, I think, rarely you get with your parents.
Yeah.
All these things has the social norm, as you mentioned, the social norm has broken up a bit. Mm-hmm. It is, I think, people now focus on material side of the life, which is important, to provide a strength, and it is important. But now we reach this stage. Good, we have this new words come out nature. But rather than say this is the right concept or right meaning for the words, we really need to, tackle to what really happened. And to solve or to better cope or tackle this issue, it needs the whole society to aware of what has happened, rather than one individual. I don't think
it's a collective issue. And if we all agree on what is behind it, then we may be able to agree on how we can collectively not behave like this.
Because if you don't feel that the younger generation, they're part of the development, if they cannot get on the property ladder, let's say in the UK, if they cannot be part of the major mainstream society who would like to gain opportunity to develop what they want to do, your next couple of generation will not be good. You will be punished by the next generation are not as innovative, as active, and as creative as your generation. So I think it's all interconnected. Which I think this is a very interesting internet buzzing words, which worth of your time and think about it. And thank you very much for the analysis. I think this is great.
Thank you. I learned something.
Thank you, sir.